Radio MD.
RadioMD.com.
The world's preeminent talk radio portal.
All about your health.
And now here's Melanie Cole, MS, host of Staying Well.
You know, more women than men die from heart disease each year, and up until 1984 or so, most heart attack deaths happened to men, and almost all the studies that were ever coming out were done on men, and the studies were not done on women. And our very unique set of symptoms, my guest is Dr. Shyla High. She's a non-invasive cardiologist affiliated with Baylor Heart and Vascular Hospital in Dallas. So, Dr. High, tell us about women and heart disease. Really, these studies were always done on men. Men were the ones that we, assumed and put with this particular disease, but it's almost completely shifted, hasn't it?
Thank you, Melanie, for this opportunity to talk about the number one killer of women, and that's heart disease. It's getting better with respect to the research on women, but even still, 24% of all heart-related studies are women. And so, although the awareness is getting better, we have a huge crisis that we're facing.
Well, and people don't even realize it. Women, we think we can do it all. We're the caregivers for our spouses, our children, our parents. We kind of take care of everybody, but we don't always take care of ourselves. Put your own mask on before you do the others. So what do you want people to know about women and heart disease? So start with our unique set of symptoms. If we're worried about heart disease, or we are worried that we're having a heart attack, tell us what symptoms. That's what people always want to know that they should watch out for.
You've underscored an outstanding point, and that is that women tend to deny that they are at risk, number one, and then they tend to ignore the symptoms because, quite frankly, Melanie, they can be very vague. They can be a new onset fatigue, shortness of breath, sometimes a nonspecific back pain. Maybe they have a change in their sleep pattern. But studies have shown that women will deny and ignore symptoms, and actually they will call 911 on their husband sooner than they will on themselves.
Absolutely true. Now, men, typically it's the pain down the right arm, the clutching chest, you've seen it in movies. But women, it's a little different sometimes. You mentioned the nonspecific back pain, possibly shortness of breath. What about jaw pain? And do we get that right arm thing?
It's been shown that at least 50% of heart attacks in women, they did not have any prior symptoms, but I believe it's because they didn't recognize them. And even though women do have the classic tightness, pressure feeling, they have an increased incidence of the atypical symptoms. And so it starts with awareness, because if they're not aware that these symptoms can reflect heart disease, they're not going to know to look for them and then not act on them.
Okay, so when we think of those symptoms, if someone is experiencing it, when do you suggest they do call 911 or pay attention to those symptoms?
If someone experiences a change that they believe is related to a heart attack, it's important to chew an aspirin and call 911. If they feel like they've noticed a change that occurs with exercise and maybe it's less dramatic, then they need to schedule an appointment to make sure that that symptom is evaluated. But if they're in a critical situation, it can't waste time, because time is heart muscle, and that is a worse prognosis. So time is very important.
You mentioned an aspirin. Baby aspirin, or does it have to be a regular aspirin?
If you feel like you're in the setting of a heart attack, it's best to chew a full-strength 325 milligram aspirin.
Okay, because, women hear that, and then we all want to keep our aspirin around just in case. What do you recommend women, and we're going to get to the nutritional aspect and what we can do to prevent, because that's really, with all the healthcare reform, and you and I are both in preventive medicine now. This is where it's all going. But in the meantime, before we talk about that, just tell us a little bit about what tests do you think women should have that are the most important predictors for heart disease? Are we still looking at homocysteine, CRP? Should we have stress tests? What tests?
I want to encourage your listeners, Melanie, that 75% of heart disease is preventable. And the cornerstone of that prevention centers around things that never require you to go see a doctor, and that's exercise, control the weight, healthy diet, and not smoke. So we are in control to a large degree about this disease, with respect to this disease. And those things, if we're inactive and overweight and smoke, that sets the table for chronic illnesses like blood pressure, cholesterol, and diabetes. So I encourage women to know their numbers, their ideal body weight, what is their blood pressure, their blood glucose, their cholesterol, and what their dietary goals are.
Okay, so stress test?
A stress test has not been shown to be recommended to ladies unless they're having symptoms that should warrant testing.
Okay, so in that case, it's not a predictor of an advance. It's more symptom checker. Now, what about nutritionally? What are the most important things you think that women can do nutritionally besides keeping our weight down to help prevent heart disease?
Well, I appreciate the opportunity to talk about nutrition, and I've spent a lot of time in the book on it because I think that's an area that physicians don't spend a lot of time on. I recommend typically the DASH diet, which focuses on nutritionally rich fruits and vegetables and whole wheat grains, poultry and fish, and to limit the fat and sugary foods that we tend to like but don't really like us.
Okay, so quick, we only have a couple of minutes, so give the DASH diet just so that people have an idea of what to eat. They want to know what to eat.
The DASH diet centers on healthy fruits, vegetables, whole wheat grains, poultry, fish, limit red meat, and then supplement with some nuts and dry beans.
So nuts and legumes are beans, and the vegetables, I mean, that's really something people don't always know what to do with some of these super vegetables like kale or chard. But I make it a game with people I work with. Go get it and pick a recipe and see who makes the best recipe. Things like that, because these kinds of things are so good for us, right?
Yes, and I think you've highlighted a very important point, and that is to make it fun. Exercise, can be fun. Nutritionally rich diets can actually be pleasant. This is not putting someone in diet jail. It's really something that will help them long term and actually can be quite pleasant at the time.
Well, it sure can be, and by turning things into a fun event or, sort of maybe even a competition, you can get the whole family to eat like this. Now, when we eat like this, we are going to be able to hopefully prevent these symptoms, prevent heart attacks, prevent heart disease in general.
There was a recent study looking at strawberries and blueberries, and over a period of years, a very robust study showed that women that ate 3 servings of berries a week had a 36% reduction in heart attacks.
That's not much at all.
No, it's really not.
That's amazing that you can eat 3 servings of blueberries or strawberries and get that kind of an effect from them. That's just a wonderful thing to hear. Now tell people in the last 45 seconds, wrap it up for us and tell them just the name of your book.
The name of my book is Why Most Women Die, How Can They Avoid the Number One Killer, which is heart disease. It'll be available on Amazon and on my website, High on the Heart, on February 1st, which coincides with the National Wear Red Day.
Okay, so the book is called Why Most Women Die, How Women Can Fight Their Number One Killer, Heart Disease. And Dr. Shyla High, just wrap it up. 20 seconds, your most important advice for preventing heart disease in women.
I recommend that women not smoke, regularly exercise, eat well, and listen to their bodies for any change in symptoms that could be worrisome.
Listen to your bodies, ladies. We listen to everybody else's bodies. Our child says, I've got a stomach ache, and perk up and pay attention. Well, there are symptoms for women, and you must know these symptoms. Also know your numbers. Know what your blood pressure is. Know what your glucose and cholesterol numbers are. Make sure you get your regular annual physical checkups. We have to put on our own masks before we can put on the masks of our loved ones. So, ladies, take care of yourselves, and then you'll be better apt to take care of everyone else around you. This is Melanie Cole for Radio MD. Stay well.